Okay, now we're going to be talking about influence. Well, what is influence? Influence is kind of like a push that when you are in a group, in a way, you are pushed in some way towards in a particular direction. So in some cases, the majority, so if you're in a group of 5 people, maybe the 4 other people in the group are either implicitly or explicitly pushing you in a particular direction, and that would indicate majority influence. On the other hand, maybe you want to influence those other 4 group members, and that would be minority influence. But basically the idea is a sense of pushing towards consensus, pushing toward agreement, toward uniformity, so that you are essentially conforming to what the group is doing, or the group is conforming to what you want to do. Okay? So, when we talk about conformity, this is when a person conforms to what the group is essentially doing. You might resist the urge to conform. You might try to rebel against the group. So we're going to talk a little bit about social influence here. Start with majority influence. This is the influence of the majority over the minority. Majority in number. So in other words, the influence of 4 against 1, or 7 against 2, or whatever it happens to be in the particular group. Okay? So influence comes from people. Social influence is the influence that other people are giving you to essentially move in a particular direction. So majority influence is illustrated here. Look at all of these. So this is, let's say, will be a 7-person group. Look at all these 6 members of the group trying to influence this one person over here. Minority influence, on the other hand, is this one individual trying to influence all 6 of these individuals. By the way, which is actually a harder thing to do. Clearly, it's harder to influence many if you're just one individual. So minority influence is harder to accomplish than majority influence. Majority influence is much easier to accomplish. Solomon Asch did some classic studies on conformity, where he had individuals participate in an experiment where they were sitting amongst a group of other people, and they had to just make a judgment about which line was the same length as another line, and kind of like a visual perception test. Well, in his particular research, he had members of the group that were observing those things, some of them to be Confederates, where basically the Confederates would purposely give the wrong answer, and Asch was trying to see to what extent the person would give the wrong answer, knowing it was wrong, just to go along with the group. So here is the stimulus lines that the subjects were given. They're shown the standard line and they say, which of these 3 lines matches? Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that it is line 2 that is the best match with the standard line. Okay? Here's another slide. Clearly line 3 is the same as the standard. Now this is intentionally supposed to be a very easy task. The idea being that there should only be one correct answer, there should be no ambiguity, there should be no doubt. There is no doubt that line 3 is the correct answer. So far, so good. Well, what if you're sitting there taking this test, doing it several times over, until on one of the trials, somebody here, the person next to you says, number 1. Then somebody else says, number 1. Third person says, number 1. Clearly the wrong answer. What do? you are going to feel the pressure to also give the wrong answer, to go along with the group, even though you know it's the wrong answer. That's the power of social influence and the power of majority influence, because the way Ash set up the study was that the real subject was only one of among 5 or 6 others. As a result, the pressure was to conform, and it was a majority influence pressure. And what did Ash find? Even on this very easy task, 76% made at least one error. And again, when they make an error, it's not an error like a whoops error. They were intentionally giving the incorrect answer just to go along with the group, because the task was very easy, unambiguous. Okay? On average, 37% conformed. How many group members never conformed?
Call from Silver D. Call from Silver D.
Interestingly enough, 24% never conformed. So not everybody conformed. Some people did rebel and they never conformed. How many group members conformed 8 times or more? 28%. So 28% were high conformers. And 5% conformed even when they were tested by themselves. They made one error when, made at least one error when tested by themselves. So clearly, there was, when they were making errors over here, this was done as a result of majority influence, not because they saw the lines wrong. So, social influence does put pressure on the individual. And as a result, again, think about social influence being majority influence here. Now, you as the individual can have several possible choices. Okay, so if you are an individual being influenced, perhaps by the majority, well, there are several ways in which you can respond to this. One way to respond is to comply. And this means what you are doing is you are going along with the group even though you personally do not agree. And that's essentially what happened in Ash's study. When those people when those subjects gave the wrong answer, they knew they were giving the wrong answer, but they were only doing it because they were complying with the rest of the group. They were doing what the other group was doing. They were just responding with compliance. They were not believing that the answer they were giving was the correct one. On the other hand, the group might influence you so that you actually will actually change your mind. They could actually change your mind. So the majority influence can actually cause you to think, well, maybe if all these other people are thinking, maybe they're right, and maybe I'm wrong. So this is where you actually convert and you actually accept what the group is saying. And you go along with the group not because you're just complying with what the group says, but you're actually converted. You actually agree with what the group is saying. A third option would just be to be independent and just go ahead and go your own way. You consider what they were saying, but said, no, I'm going to go my own way. I disagree with you, and I'm not going to change my opinion. So independence means you are resisting what the group is influencing you. You're going with your own opinion, even if it differs. Anti-conformity reflects your decision to go against the group, not necessarily because you disagree with the group, but you basically want to kind of take a devil's advocate point of view. You want to you want to present a dissenting point of view just because you don't want to conform. If you think about the movie 12 Angry Men, this is what juror number 8 did. He wasn't sure whether the guy was guilty or not, but he didn't just want to go along with the group and say guilty, so he purposely went against the group. He purposely went against conformity, even though he wasn't sure. Congruence is where you would actually agree with the group, but you didn't even need the group's influence to do so. You were in agreement even before you joined the group. So in that respect, there's no influence whatsoever. You already agreed. You already agreed before you met with the group. So as you can see, these are the ways in which you could respond to influence. Now, if you go into Ash's study, he wanted to find out, well, what are the circumstances which would make conformity more likely? He said, well, if there's more people, there's going to be more conformity. That makes a lot of sense. If there's just one other person, one subject and one confederate, the conformity is going to be low. But now if there's two confederates, the conformity increases. If it's three confederates, then you're getting pretty high. But after three sources of influence, 4, 5, 6, you're not really getting any. You're getting what are called diminishing returns. Adding more people does not significantly increase the level of conformity. So there's kind of like that magic number here with 3 or 4 sources of majority influence. That's where you're going to get, that's kind of like the magic number as far as where you're going to get get influence. And any more than that is unnecessary. Now, what are some factors, other than the size of the group, that can influence your conformity? Well, one of them is the unanimity of the majority. If everyone in the majority is unanimous, they all agree, well, then they're going to have a bigger influence on you than if you've only got, if you got 10 people there and 7 agree and 3 disagree, well, it's going to be a lot harder for you to resist if all 10 agree. And this leads to the idea that if there is another dissenter, even if that other dissenter is incorrect. So if you go back to Ash's study, what if one of the confederates gave another incorrect answer, a different incorrect answer than the other confederates? Well, in that case, you as the subject are actually going to be a lot less likely to conform. When you see somebody else rebel, when you see somebody else offer a dissenting viewpoint, even if it's a different dissenting viewpoint, it gives you the courage to give your own true opinion, your own true evaluation. So you're going to be much less likely to conform if you see somebody else resist conformity. Think about that as a lesson. If you're in a group and maybe you don't like what the group is doing, you're probably not going to be the only one who feels that way. So therefore, go ahead and resist the urge to conform, and you might find that 1 or 2 or 3 other members of your group feel the same way, and they would then have the courage to dissent as well. Okay. There are certain kinds of situations which are going to make it much harder for you to resist influence. If you're at a table and everyone else is looking at you and they've all stated their opinions out loud and they're waiting for you to state your opinion, boy, that's a strong situation. If you're in a weak situation where everybody has written down a secret answer, maybe you've seen what the answers are, you can write down whatever you want, but nobody will necessarily know it's you who said it. Or, if you're in a remote situation, you don't see the other people who you are dissenting from, well, then it gives you a greater, it gives you more courage to dissent in that case. So again, like the Crutchfield situation here is where you're an individual booth and you're responding electronically. There's still going to be conformity, but in this kind of situation, there's going to be less conformity because you're not actually seeing the other people, but there is still going to be some conformity here. There are some other factors that might make conformity either more or less likely. What if, in Ash's study, if you gave the wrong answer, what are the consequences? There really aren't any consequences. What if, however, Ash had changed the design of the study and said, I'm going to give $100 to a person who gives the most correct answers. Well, if you know that you could win $100, then you're not going to go along with the group just because they're saying it. You're going to go for your $100. So that might be an influence that might say, well, accuracy is important here. If you're not accurate, you don't get your $100. So there are certain kinds of group contexts where a decision in its accuracy is most important. And in those kind of circumstances, you're going to be less likely to conform because you just want to get the correct answer. Cohesion. And this is an interesting thing. You want to work in a cohesive group. You want to work in a group where everybody is either likes each other or they're focused on their task and they're all together, they're all one unit. You really want to be in those kind of circumstances. However, one of the drawbacks is that in those kind of circumstances, there is a lot of pressure to conform. You're going to go along with the group, even if the group makes a lousy decision. You're going to go along with it because you want to stay close. You want to be cohesive. Okay? So this is an important thing to consider. Task difficulty. If the task is very difficult, you might conform if you feel that maybe you're not very confident that the result you're getting, that your opinion, your result is correct. You might go along with the group just because you think, well, maybe they know better anyway. If it's a difficult task, so in that case, you might not be more likely to conform. If the status of the other members is high, in other words, if you are the low man on the totem pole, and everybody else is kind of like has a higher status than you, they're all bosses, and you're just the employee. You might, and they're stating their opinion. Well, you might be tempted to go along with their opinion and conform because of the high status of the other group members. Social impact theory stresses that there are three factors: strength, immediacy, and number, which influence your your likelihood to conform. If the source has a high degree of strength, then that source will be more likely to get you to conform. Immediacy. If the source is right up next to you, close to you, then it makes a stronger influence, makes you more likely to conform. And the number. If there are a greater number of individuals, a number of sources that are trying to get you to conform, the greater the number, the more likely you are to conform. So if you take a look here, you're the target of influence here. Many different sources, you are going to be influenced. Some sources are stronger. This is the strongest source. This is going to have a big impact on you as far as getting you to conform. This one here is not a very strong source, but it's right close to you. Is going to have an influence on your likelihood of conforming. Are there individual differences in conformity? Of course there are. There are some people who are just going to be more likely to conform. They're going to be, maybe someone who is really, as an example, really follows in line with authority. So, and if the authority says something, you're going to go along with it. maybe those types of individuals are going to be more likely to conform. So this is an authoritarian. They respect and obey authorities. They're going to be more likely to conform. Okay. What about individualism, collectivism? People from collectivist culture actually conform more because they want to achieve harmony. They don't want to make waves in a group, so they want to achieve those harmonies, so they're actually going to be more likely to conform. Need for closure. People who just want to close, who don't want to sit and deliberate over and over again, they just want to finish. People with a high need for closure are going to be more likely to conform because it's quicker and they get to close faster.